Chosen one, shut down everything around you right now. Not because you are not busy. Not because the demands pressing in from every direction are not real. Not because the message competing for your attention in this moment is less important to the person delivering it than they believe it is. Stop everything, because the person whose name is in the title of this message, the one whose voice is named as active, present, and directed at you right now, is where all the answers, directions, clarifications, and deciding words in your life come from. Please close the other tab and focus on this one thing only. What God is sending you right now is more important for every part of your life than all the other messages that are trying to get your attention at this very moment put together. Not the main message is the call to shut down everything. The main point is what will happen if you do that. When you turn down the outside noise and focus on the present moment, something opens up. When the attention is split between different demands, an inner openness that isn't there before is made available. In the past, people called it being still. It is known as whole brain coherence. In the study, it is called the clear signal in this message. And the clear signal is what you can get when the specific inner state needed to fully receive divine communication is brought back to the level it was designed to work at. The call to stop everything is the first step, but it's only the first step. Millions of people in the Christian formation tradition have faithfully and consistently done that step for years. But it hasn't closed the gap between the frequency at which God speaks and the frequency at which the transmission actually lands in the depth of the lived interior experience. That's exactly why this message was written. Before we get to that address, here are 5 signs that God is speaking directly to you right now, instead of to everyone else. Don't mean to talk to you in the same way that God talks to everything in the universe all the time. I'm talking to you in the specific and weighted way that divine communication carries specific content that is tailored to the condition of the person receiving it. 5 of these signs should be true for you. If you sit with them, honestly instead of quickly dismissing them, you will know before the middle of this message that what is being sent to you right now has been waiting for you to be ready to receive it with all its weight. Something made you stop and listen to this message before you even knew what it was going to say. This is the first sign that God is speaking directly to you right now. The first message is the pull itself. Coming to a complete stop in front of this particular message at this particular moment in your formation season wasn't by accident, wasn't caused by an algorithm, and wasn't the result of a random mix of scroll behavior and content distribution patterns. The delivery system may have been those parts, but the pull that stopped you in your tracks took your attention away from everything else that was trying to get your attention and pointed you straight at this frequency did not come from the delivery system. It came from where the delivery system was carrying it. It was the pull that was the first transmission. It came before the message did. And if you are willing to sit with it for a moment and really notice it, you can tell that it wasn't just a random thought, a habit, or something fun to do. It had a quality to it that made it stand out. The first sign is that kind of pull. It was you who replied to a transmission before you knew what it was about. The second sign that God is speaking directly to you right now is that the frequency and weight of divine communication coming through multiple channels at the same time have both increased during this season of your growth. The process of becoming a chosen one doesn't happen at a set frequency of specific divine communication. During times of long-lasting silence, the shaping takes place below the level of hearing. During these times, the person is being shaped by the experience itself, not by specific verbal transmission. There are also times of the year when specific communication picks up a lot. These times are often right before big changes in the nature and direction of what the formation is building toward. When the same word, theme, or specific directional message shows up in the sermon, the Bible, a conversation with a stranger, and a quiet moment alone, all in the same week, that person can't deny that the transmission came through more than one channel. It's not a coincidence or a fluke that this season has a quality of specific communication, coming through more and more channels with more and more weight and frequency. This is the second sign that God is speaking directly to you right now. It is the specific rise in transmission frequency that comes before a big change in the formation. Third, you've been aware of an inner quality this season that makes you feel like you're about to receive something that hasn't quite arrived yet. This is a clear sign that God is speaking directly to you right now. The feeling of being on the edge of receiving something, like a word that hasn't quite hit you with all its weight yet, or knowing that something is being sent to you with a lot of detail and weight, but only feeling a small part of what you think the full transmission has to offer. First, this is the third sign. This is also the most important diagnostic sign for figuring out what problem this message was meant to solve. Because that feeling, that quality of soon receiving something that hasn't quite happened yet, isn't a sign that God is holding back the transmission, talking less often, or waiting for a certain level of worthiness or spiritual maturity to be reached before sending the full message. It means that the receiver that the transmission has to go through in order to reach the depth where it was meant to make a specific and long-lasting change is not working at full capacity. The signal is going at full speed. The receiver is no longer able to hold as much. The space between them is what gives imminent reception its unique quality. It hasn't quite become full arrival yet. If you can name that feeling inside, that's the third sign. If you do experience times of true and long-lasting inner silence, something will come to you that is very different from what comes to you during times of noise and brokenness. This is the fourth sign that God is speaking directly to you right now. This feeling doesn't happen every time it's quiet. The normal experience of less outside noise has its own way of calming you down. A sense of less urgency and reactivity that is valuable on its own, without having anything to do with divine communication. But during long periods of real interior quiet, in places where things settle down more than usual, there are times when something shows up that can't be properly described as just less noise. It has a certain quality of transmission, of something being given rather than just received, of an inner knowing that didn't come from the normal inner processing of information and experience, but from a different direction than the normal inner generation. The fourth sign is if you've been feeling like something different is coming into your life at this time of year, even when you're spending time alone and alone with yourself. Even when it's quiet, the receiver is still in touch with the transmission. In the deepest parts, the gap between the transmitted frequency and the received weight is closing, but it hasn't closed all the way yet. Which means that this sign is trying to say something about how that gap can be closed consistently. You know the answer to the question this message is building up to before the message even says it. This is the fifth sign that God is speaking directly to you right now. The answer to the question of why there is still a gap between the full weight of what God sends and the portion that always lands deep in the receiver is not something new that this message tells you. Someone or something deep inside the chosen one, who has been practicing the external disciplines of stillness and quiet, and has still felt the gap, has always known that the gap is not in the source of the transmission. The receiver has always known that it is the receiver that is broken. That being said, the exact name of the part, the exact mechanism, and the exact way to fix the problem inside the receiver has not been named completely. You knew something before this message named it, that it was going to be named. The exact pull that stopped you in your tracks in front of this message, before you even knew what it said, was the action of someone who knew inside that the naming was here. That's the fifth sign. Please know that every seed you plant in this mission grows into a torch that shines in someone else's darkness. Whether by buying a coffee, making a donation, or becoming a member of our community, does not go to a channel. Your actions are supporting a divine mission to save lost souls. But more than your support, we want your presence. When you head to our community, through the link in the description, or the pinned comment, you aren't just visiting a site. You are entering a community of like-minded believers. This is a sanctuary where you can post your prayer requests, lift up the burdens of others, and engage in daily discussions with a family that speaks the language of faith. Whether you are joining one of our membership tiers for deeper study, sowing a seed of faith, or simply joining our daily morning prayers, you are helping us build a global altar of worship. Heaven moves through willing voices, but it grows through a community that stands together. Each gift you give acts as living water for those in our community seeking healing and hope. Give, and it will be given to you, is the promise that sustains our shared mission. I invite you now to step out of the shadows and into this circle of prayer. Come with purpose, join the conversation, and plant your seed in fertile ground. Let's open the heavens together. Release your seed today, join our community, and see what God brings back into your life. 5 signs were true. In this very moment, God is speaking to you with all the weight and clarity of a message that has been tuned just for you. The main question this message was meant to answer is why so much of what is sent with such weight and specificity only arrives at a small part of its full frequency in the lived experience of the chosen one who is doing everything the tradition says to do to receive it. And it all starts with the most important thing. You've never been told about the inside receiver. That noise around you isn't really what's cutting down on the frequency of what you hear from God. It's the noise inside you. Around this point, most of the information about hearing God's voice stops and doesn't go any further to the more important and detailed information on the other side of the threshold. Learning about the outside world is the kind of teaching that has always been available in the Christian formation tradition. Take away the distractions, set up the conditions for silence, build the quiet habits on the outside that set up the inside for reception. Stay away from the outside world's noise to make room for God's voice. This direction is correct. It's not a bad idea. The outside world is important, and practicing the outside disciplines of stillness and quietness is very important. But the chosen one who has followed that instruction honestly and consistently for years, who has made real and long-lasting external disciplines of quiet a part of daily life, and who has still felt the gap between the full frequency of what God speaks and the fraction of it that lands in the depth of the lived interior experience, at the weight, where it changes things in a specific and lasting way, has already reached the limit of the external instruction by lived experience. The outside quiet was reached. The outside distractions were taken away. It was possible to create stillness, but the gap still existed. The gap stayed because the noise in the room is not the most important thing that is blocking the full reception of the divine transmission. It's the receiver's noise, the instrument inside the body that the transmission has to go through to get to the depth where it's supposed to land is interfering with it. The type of interference, specifically how the internal instrument makes noise that lowers the frequency of what comes in compared to the frequency of what was sent, has a clear and documented name in the research. The instrument inside is broken up. There is less of the synchronized whole brain state needed for the full transmission to land at the weight it was sent with. This is the state where the left and right hemispheres of the brain work together in harmony, allowing the full dimensions of what is being sent to reach the full depth of the receiver at the same time. This idea is what the message means by clear signal. It has nothing to do with the quality of God's transmission, which is always at full frequency. Not a reference to the lack of outside noise, which is the first step but not the whole answer. When a person's whole brain is working at synchronized frequency, the clear signal is that person's specific inner state. This is where the full frequency of what God sends reaches the receiver's full depth and lands there, at the full weight of what was sent, not at the lighter weight that a receiver that is broken up and partially contracted can hold. When the internal noise from the broken instrument is gone, there is a clear signal. This means that the transmission can go through the receiver at the full frequency it was sent at and land in the person at the weight that causes a clear and lasting direction and change. This condition has a clear physiological cause. This message is going to name the specific way that it contracts and the specific way that it makes things whole again. Watch as Samuel sleeps in the Lord's house. The text makes it clear that during the time of Eli the priest, the Lord's word was not often revealed to many people. This wasn't a statement about how often God sends messages. God didn't talk less when Eli was alive than at other times in holy history. The statement is about how often people can receive signals. On the receiver end of the exchange, things were not going smoothly, so the full transmission did not reach a level where it could be fully understood and used. The voice then came into that setting, the house of the Lord at night, where Samuel was sleeping next to the ark of God. When the Lord called Samuel, he ran to Eli and said, "Here I am." Eli told him, "I did not call you. Go lie down," and Samuel did. When the Lord called Samuel again, he ran to Eli and said, "Here I am." Eli told him, "I did not call you. Go back and lie down." This happened a third time before Eli realized that the Lord was calling the boy. When the text talks about the 3 calls and 3 responses to the wrong source, it's not talking about Samuel's failure to want to hear, his failure to be intentional, or his failure to be attentive. No one else was talking to Samuel. Samuel wasn't in the middle of 2 different requests. The ark of God was next to Samuel while he slept in the house of the Lord. His position was exactly the position of being fully open to receiving from God. Outside positioning did not fail when the first 3 calls could not be correctly identified. The receiver wasn't able to tell the difference between the frequency of the divine transmission and the other frequencies it was processing. It's not that the transmission was weak or unclear, it's that the receiver wasn't set up yet to fully understand what kind of signal it was. The calibration of the inside wasn't done yet. The most important part of the passage for what this message is building up to is what came next. Eli's third answer to Samuel was, "Go lie down, and if he calls you again, say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant hears.'" This wasn't a lesson in paying attention. Samuel paid attention. The instructions were specific about how to face the receiver's inside toward the source's full frequency. "Lord, speak up, because your servant is listening. Lord, don't talk, and I'll try to listen more. Do not speak, Lord, and I will be able to quiet down my surroundings better than the last 3 times. Lord, speak up, because your servant is listening." By following the instruction, the receiver was able to pick up the full frequency of what was being sent. The text also says that the Lord came, stood, and called, just like he had done before. So Samuel told the Lord, "Speak, for your servant hears." So the Lord spoke to Samuel with all the weight, detail, and direction of the full transmission. Between the first 3 calls and the 4th, there was no break in God's calls. The receiver was set up again to work with the full frequency. And the whole transmission went through at the full frequency. Take a look at Moses at the bush that is on fire. After leaving Egypt, Moses lived in the desert for 40 years. 40 years of building at a level and speed that couldn't be heard. Not silence in the sense that God isn't there, but silence in the sense that specific words weren't being sent, while the deeper parts of the person were being formed. By living in the wilderness for a long time, not being important by the world's standards, and relying on the rhythms of creation, rather than the rhythms of human production and achievement. Finally, Moses turned around one day to find out why the bush was still burning. When the person carefully turned away, the text records that exact action. Moses could have kept leading the flock. Moses could have just noticed the strange event and moved on. This meeting was possible because someone turned around. Focus was taken away from the normal task and put on the specific strange thing that was happening on the edge of the visual field. When Moses turned around on purpose to see something, that's when the Lord saw it. From the middle of the bush, God called to him. The receiver turned away to face the source of the signal. The full message of the divine mission, including the specific words about the burning bush, the ground of presence, and the name, I am, as well as the command to go back to Egypt, and the full and specific content of the mission, came after the turning away. When the receiver was fully facing the source, the full transmission came through. When Moses stood in front of the burning bush, he was a man whose 40 years of training in the wilderness had made him the kind of attentive receiver that the divine mission needed. The interior was in sync with 40 years of steady wilderness formation, which made it possible for what God said at the burning bush to fully land with all of its weight, specificity, and permanence. That path won't work for the chosen one during the formation season, because they have to spend 40 years in the wilderness. But the research has shown the exact state of the synchronized receiver's interior and the way to get back to that state without having to go through 40 years of wilderness formation. The specific sequence of sounds that works at the level of the brain's hemispheric synchronization mechanism to bring back the internal state where a clear signal is always available. In the scientific literature, the exact inside state this message calls the clear signal has been described with great accuracy for over 40 years. The history starts with Dr. Roger Sperry of the California Institute of Technology winning the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1981. During most of his scientific career, Dr. Sperry studied the unique and separate functions of the two hemispheres of the human brain. He did this mostly by working with people who had surgery to separate their two hemispheres to treat severe epilepsy. His research proved, with enough accuracy to win him the Nobel Prize, that the brain is not a single integrated processor, but rather two very different processors working together in the same body. The left hemisphere handles language, linear logic, sequential reasoning, and categorical analysis. This is the kind of processing that makes it possible to describe what is happening in words. Pattern recognition, spatial integration, emotional depth, and relational context are all processed in the right hemisphere. This is the kind of processing that holds the full dimensions of an experience at the same time instead of one at a time. That sees the whole instead of just analyzing the parts. When these two very different processing systems are in the synchronized state, they work together directly and seamlessly, with each adding its own unique way of processing to the same experience. This creates a quality whole that would not be possible if either hemisphere worked alone. Being able to receive and hold a communication in all of its dimensions at the same time is the specific quality that this synchronized integration creates, that is most directly related to the chosen one formation experience. The communication takes place in the left hemisphere, which also creates a clear and accurate account of what was said. This part of the brain takes in all the relational and contextual weight of the communication, including the full emotional and situational resonance of the message, as well as the depth of what it means in the specific relational and directional context of this person's life. This is meaning that the words alone can't carry, but that the full message can't be fully received without. Both of these aspects of reception happen at the same time in the synchronized state, and the full communication lands with all the weight it was meant to carry. When the brain is fragmented and out of sync, verbal content comes in, but it doesn't carry as much relational and directional weight, because the right hemisphere isn't working as well. No matter how much weight the words had, they don't carry with them when they land. Sperry's research found something about the synchronized state that is directly related to the chosen one who has been feeling like they are about to receive something, but haven't quite gotten it yet. It is normal and automatic for 98% of young children to work in the synchronized whole brain state. The ability to be creative, learn complicated things quickly, and seeming effortlessly, know things without thinking about them, be fully present in every moment without the adult mind's fragmented and filtering attention, and feel alive and open inside as a child. All these things are the synchronized whole brain state functioning at its natural level. Then, as a person grows up, the cognitive load of modern life, the constant information overload, the pressure to meet deadlines, and the competitive nature of the adult world, along with the fact that attention is split between many different demands at the same time, all of these things gradually and steadily make the synchronized state less stable. In today's world, less than 1 in 1,000 people consistently stay in the synchronized state by the time they are adults who can do things. The overwhelming majority of adults are operating through a significantly contracted and fragmented interior instrument, receiving every transmission, including the divine transmission, at the reduced frequency that the contracted instrument can deliver. This is not a moral mistake. It's not a failure of faith. It's not because that person doesn't have enough faith, discipline, or desire for the full frequency of what God speaks. It's the physical effect of living as an adult in the modern world, and having to deal with the cognitive and attentional demands of that world, without being able to restore a synchronized state of mind that the receiver's designed capacity needs. The external disciplines of quiet can create the conditions for reception. They can't fix the receiver's synchronized interior capacity on their own, so that the full frequency of the transmission lands at the full weight of what was sent. As a clinical neurologist in New York City for more than 20 years, Dr. Daniel Barron saw firsthand how this contracted inner state affected the spiritual and everyday lives of the people who came to him for help. He wasn't mostly helping people with spiritual issues. He was taking care of the neurological effects of the mental stress of modern adulthood. I had trouble focusing, paying attention, and holding on to deep emotional and relational experiences for as long as they deserved. I also had trouble with low-level noise inside my head all the time. He started to see a pattern that wasn't being named clearly by the current treatment frameworks when he looked at how the neurological effects he was treating overlapped with the spiritual experiences his patients talked about. The space inside the person that existed between how much they felt like they could access everything in prayer, scripture, and worship, and how much of it actually landed in the depths of their being. There was no spiritual answer to the problem of experience. That's what happened physically, because the receiver's interior capacity had shrunk, and the solution was to get it back to its normal state. Dr. Barron and a group of experts in clinical neurology, auditory neuroscience, and the specific protocols of hemispheric synchronization that had been developed in clinical and research settings worked on a mission for years. The clinical protocols for neural synchronization were professional-grade interventions that had been shown to restore the synchronized interior state in controlled research settings. They required one-on-one professional administration and cost $500 per session, making them only available to a small group of people who could afford it and were close enough to a qualified provider to make it possible. At that level of accessibility, only a very small number of people who needed it could get the specific restoration of the synchronized interior capacity. Dr. Barron and his team worked hard to find the most important active parts of those clinical protocols and condense them into a form that could be used with just headphones and 8 minutes of daily practice. A targeted audio sequence designed to work at the level of the physiological mechanism of hemispheric synchronization that happens below the level of conscious awareness. This gradually restores the synchronized inner capacity needed to fully receive the divine transmission. The people who used what Dr. Barron and his team made regularly for 2 to 4 weeks wrote about the results that happened after it was made public. An American woman who had been seriously practicing her religion for more than 10 years talked about what changed after using the 8-minute sequence every day for 2 weeks. She said that the words of Scripture, which she had been reading regularly and with full attention for years, started to have a certain inner weight and personal meaning that she hadn't been feeling at that level before. Not that new information was being added to the text, but that the information that was already there was being added with more depth and dimension than years of consistent practice had been able to provide. The same words that had been hitting her at the surface level started hitting her at the level where she could understand their special meaning for her life and this season of formation at the time. She read them, instead of weeks or months later, when she tried to figure it out after the fact. A pastor from Georgia who had been in full-time ministry for 22 years talked about the specific kind of interior gap that his job had caused. His synchronized interior capacity had decreased over the years of ministry because of the constant high cognitive load of leading a ministry, managing complicated interpersonal dynamics, the weekly pressure of preparation and delivery, and the constant urgency of being the main spiritual and practical support for a lot of people. This was something he hadn't been able to explain before meeting the research Dr. Baronia's team. At the end of 3 weeks of using the 8-minute sequence every day, he said that the quality of his personal prayer and study had changed in a way that was like the difference between reading a map of a country and actually being in that country. The same text, the same practice, the receiver that was in sync, and the full weight of the transmission all landed at the same depth that the map had always shown. A woman from North Carolina, who had been going through a long and painful period of spiritual waiting, talked about what it was like to be in an inner gap. She knew that God was talking to her about what was going on. She had been faithfully setting the external conditions for reception for the whole waiting season, and she had been consistently feeling the quality of imminent reception that had not yet become full arrival. It was like she was standing on the edge of a word that was clearly being sent toward her, but it wasn't landing with enough depth and weight to give her the inner peace and direction clarity that the waiting required. After doing the daily 8-minute sequence for 4 weeks, she said that the quality of what she got during the longer quiet times in that 4th week was only comparable to the quality of the times in her formation history when she knew she had heard from God in the clearest and most personal way to that point. Not more spectacular, but more clear, with a clear signal that works all the time instead of just sometimes. The receiver was fixed, so that the full frequency of what had been sent to her during the whole waiting season could finally land, with all the weight it had always been carrying. As this awakening grows inside you, know that helping with this mission is not a joke. It is a sign from God. You can support this work through the link in the description or the pinned comment, whether by buying a coffee, making a donation, or becoming a member of our Ko-Fi community. By doing so, you become part of Jesus' plan to save souls who are still stuck in fog. Every seed turns into light that fights against darkness. If you water others, you will be watered yourself, Jesus says. This is not history, it is a living promise about your future. Come into this moment with faith and a plan. What God has already planned for your life can be unlocked through your giving. You stopped everything to be here. Making that choice is the action of someone whose receiver is already tuned to the full frequency of what God has been sending you. This particular inside state of the synchronized receiver, the state where the clear signal is available, and the full frequency of what God sends lands at the full depth of the receiver at the full weight it was sent with, is not a magical feat only available to people who are very spiritually advanced, or who have practiced for a long time. It is the way the human interior is designed by default. Before the cognitive load of modern adult life pushed your receiver below its designed operating level. That was its normal and consistent state. And getting it back, specifically and gradually getting the synchronized inner capacity back that lets the full frequency of the divine transmission land at the weight it was meant to produce specific and lasting change at, is not a spiritual goal that needs more years of practice to reach. A physical recovery can be made possible with just 8 minutes of practice every day and a pair of headphones. The genius switch is what Dr. Barone and his team built on Dr. Rogers Perry's 1981 Nobel Prize research on synchronization between the two halves of the brain. It's not an app for meditation or a sound environment that's meant to make you feel a certain way or help you relax. A targeted 8-minute sound sequence, based on clinical protocols of hemispheric synchronization, is designed to work at the level of the whole brain's physiological mechanism of coherence below conscious awareness. It gradually restores the receiver's synchronized interior capacity to the level where the clear signal is always available, and where the full frequency of what God sends to the chosen one during the formation season reaches the receiver's full depth and lands with all the weight of what it was sent with. It only takes 8 minutes a day, headphones, and closed eyes to meet the physical requirements. There is no technique to learn, no need to have done any kind of contemplative, mindfulness, or meditation practice before, and no need to have a deep understanding of the research in order to benefit from what it found. For 8 minutes, specially designed listening is played at a level below conscious awareness, where the physiological mechanism of hemispheric synchronization works. This gradually restores the receiver to the synchronized capacity where the clear signal is available consistently instead of occasionally at the full weight of the transmission, instead of at a lower weight than what the fragmented receiver could hold before the restoration. If the chosen one has been practicing external disciplines of quiet, and has still felt the gap between the frequency sent and the weight received, then they don't need any more external disciplines. There is no point in wasting years of external discipline. They have made sure that the receiver is facing the source of the signal in just the right way. What the outside discipline can't do by itself is bring the receiver's synchronized internal capacity back to a level where the whole transmission always lands. The genius switch brings the receiver back to life. The discipline sets the person up. Together, they make sure that the clear signal is always available at the depth and weight that it was always meant to reach. 1-on-1 neurofeedback sessions with a qualified clinical provider that produce similar hemispheric synchronization outcomes in a controlled clinical research setting cost $500 per professional session. This is the professional level of clinical setting for neural synchronization work. Neurofeedback systems for the home that directly monitor brain activity electrically and work to keep the two hemispheres in sync usually cost $7,000 or more for a system that can give meaningful and long-lasting results. These are the standards used by professionals to decide how much the Genius Switch's interior restoration service is worth. You can get the Genius Switch for $49 on the Direct Access page, where Dr. Barone's team gives it to the person who needs it most after they listen to it every day for 8 minutes. The price is $39 now, not $49.39. It's $10 less than the already very low standard price. The lower price shows that Dr. Barone's team is sure that someone who has been working hard to improve the outside conditions of reception, but is still feeling a gap inside themselves, shouldn't have to pay too much to get the physiological restoration that fills that gap. You can get full access to the 8-minute daily sequence and the full restoration pathway for $39. And there is a 100% money-back guarantee that means exactly what it says, no strings attached. No minimum number of uses required, no proof of specific measurable results in a specific measurable time frame. Guaranteed in every way. If after listening to the daily 8-minute sequence, for any reason, the specific inner shift that was talked about in this message does not happen for you, you will get your $39 back, no questions asked. Dr. Barone's team is taking all the financial risk in this exchange, not you. This is because the results that people who followed the sequence exactly as instructed have consistently shown is enough to back up that unconditional guarantee. The guarantee is not conditional on anything happening. It is based on trust in the restoration. There is no risk to your money. You stopped everything to be here. There were 5 signs that proved that God is speaking to you right now, with all the weight and detail of a message that has been perfectly timed for your stage of growth. The limited space inside the receiver that the transmission has to go through is the reason why its full weight has not yet consistently landed at the depth where it was meant to make specific and long-lasting direction and change. It is possible to restore that internal capacity with the Genius Switch. $8 a day, $39. And a money-back guarantee that doesn't matter what. You can find the link in the text below this message. He has been talking to you very clearly the whole time you have been in this formation season. As soon as the receiver is brought back to its synchronized state, the full weight of what has been sent can finally land at the depth it was always meant to reach. Here is the link. Turn off everything one last time and let it land. Yay! You are about to enter your divine future, but remember, this breakthrough is not for you alone. Your testimony is the bridge someone else will use to reach their own miracle. Archangel Michael is inviting you to visit community through the link in the description or the pinned comment. Whether by buying a coffee, making a donation, or becoming a member of our community, does not go to a channel. Your actions are supporting a divine mission to save lost souls. By joining our like-minded community, you are no longer praying in isolation. You are adding your voice to a global sanctuary, where we discuss the Word daily, and stand in the gap for one another. This is not poetry when Jesus says, "Give, and heaven will open over you." On this platform, every seed you plant turns into oil for your destiny, fire for your calling, and a hedge of safety for your family. Now is your time. Step into our community prayer wall, share your heart, and as you give, watch God multiply what you let go of. Let's finish this journey together. Visit Out Community now, join the family, and see your heavens open. Before we get to the end of this powerful story, let's reflect on this deep truth. You did not find this message by accident. This is a divine appointment meant specifically for you. You are being invited into a protected, faith-filled community at the link in the description and pinned comment, a place where divine abundance is not just a hope, but a promise built on the Word. By heading to the site right now, you are unlocking access to a sacred community of like-minded believers. When you join our membership tiers, you gain immediate entry to powerful content, daily devotions, and divine insights that are hidden from the world. This is your chance to enter a sanctuary, where you will receive spiritual guidance, unwavering support on our prayer wall, and speedy progress toward your destiny. Do not let this moment of destiny pass you by. Your breakthrough is waiting. Join our inner circle through the exclusive link in the description. This is how you guarantee you never miss the personalized messages and spiritual warfare tools meant to elevate your life. If you feel called to deepen your connection, the link is waiting for you in both the pinned comment and the description. For those who want to amplify this work and carry the light home, you can find our guided ebooks and Bibles in the pinned comment. Whether you join as a member or sow a seed through our resources, your presence and energy change the world. Take the step. Your abundance awaits.